3 weeks after Derek's collision with the reinforced mailbox, Marcus received the news he had been waiting for. Officer Davis called to inform him that Derek Morrison had been formally charged with multiple crimes, including vandalism, harassment, destruction of property, and hate crimes based on the racist graffiti incidents. "The district attorney reviewed all your security footage," Davis explained. "She says this is one of the clearest cases of targeted harassment she has ever seen. Morrison is looking at serious jail time and heavy fines." Derek's 2 companions had also been charged as accessories to the crimes. The security videos showed them participating in several of the mailbox attacks and helping with the graffiti vandalism. All 3 men would face trial together in the spring. The legal consequences were just the beginning of Derek's problems. His construction company lost several major contracts when word spread about his criminal charges. Local homeowners did not want to hire someone who had been arrested for racist harassment. Derek's business reputation was destroyed along with his legal standing. Marcus also learned that Derek's insurance company had refused to pay his medical bills. The insurance investigator had reviewed the security footage and determined that Derek's injuries occurred while he was committing a crime. According to the policy terms, criminal activity voided coverage for any resulting medical expenses. Derek's hospital stay had lasted 5 days. He had suffered a dislocated shoulder, 3 cracked ribs, and a severe concussion from bouncing off the immovable mailbox and hitting the asphalt. The total medical bills exceeded $15,000, all of which Derek would have to pay out of his own pocket. But the most significant development came from the Homeowners Association. Betty from the HOA office called Marcus with an update that made him smile. "We held an emergency board meeting about Derek Morrison's behavior," Betty explained. "The board voted unanimously to remove him from his position and ban him from any future involvement in HOA activities. The board had also passed new rules, specifically prohibiting harassment of residents based on race or other personal characteristics. Anyone caught engaging in such behavior would face immediate removal from the community and potential legal action. We're also disbanding that community safety patrol thing," Betty added. "It was never an official HOA program anyway. Derek created it on his own and used our name without permission." Marcus was pleased to hear that the HOA was taking strong action. He had been worried that Derek might try to use his board position to continue causing problems, even after the criminal charges were resolved, the civil lawsuit that Marcus filed against. Derek moved forward quickly thanks to the overwhelming video evidence. Derek's lawyer advised him to settle out of court rather than face a jury trial where the security footage would be shown publicly. The settlement amount was confidential, but it covered all of Marcus's property damage, legal fees, and compensation for months of emotional distress suffered by his family. Derek's lawyer also negotiated a formal written apology and a legal agreement that Derek would never contact or approach the Thompson family again. Marcus used part of the settlement money to upgrade his home security system and donate to local civil rights organizations. But the most satisfying purchase was a small bronze plaque that he mounted near his famous mailbox. It read, "This mailbox was built to withstand all forms of destruction. Installed November 2023, still standing strong." The story of Marcus's engineering solution to Derek's harassment became legendary in Millfield Springs and beyond. A neighbor posted the security footage on social media, where it was shared thousands of times. Local news stations picked up the story and featured interviews with Marcus about his creative problem-solving approach. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," Marcus told the news reporter. "I just wanted to protect my family and my property. Sometimes you have to stand up to bullies in a way they understand." The news coverage brought Marcus more support than he had expected. He received letters and emails from people across the country who had faced similar harassment. Many of them thanked him for showing that victims did not have to accept bullying passively. Several engineering magazines wrote articles about Marcus's mailbox design. Tom Rodriguez was featured as the structural engineer who had helped create what journalists dubbed the most over-engineered mailbox in America. Tom enjoyed the attention and used it to promote his consulting business. The mailbox itself became a tourist attraction of sorts. People would drive through Millfield Springs just to see the famous reinforced mailbox that had ended Derek Morrison's harassment campaign. Marcus did not mind the attention, though he asked visitors to be respectful of his family's privacy. Derek Morrison eventually pled guilty to all charges rather than face a jury trial. He was sentenced to 6 months in jail, 2 years of probation, and 500 hours of community service. He was also required to attend anger management classes and sensitivity training about racial tolerance. The judge who sentenced Derek made it clear that hate crimes would not be tolerated in their community. She praised Marcus for handling the situation, legally and peacefully. Instead of resorting to violence or vigilante justice, Mr. Thompson showed remarkable restraint and intelligence in dealing with months of criminal harassment, the judge said. His approach should serve as a model for others facing similar situations. Derek's wife, Linda, followed through on her promise to make sure her husband received professional help. Derek began seeing a counselor who specialized in anger management and racial bias issues. Linda also divorced Derek 6 months after his conviction, saying that she could not remain married to someone who had committed hate crimes. The other members of Derek's former patrol group quietly disbanded their activities and avoided any further contact with Marcus or his family. Most of them were embarrassed about their involvement in the harassment campaign and wanted to move on with their lives. Marcus's family gradually returned to normal life in their dream home. Sarah resumed her gardening projects without worrying about vandalism. Maya and James could walk through the neighborhood without fear of encountering hostile adults. The family finally felt like they truly belonged in Millfield Springs. The relationship with neighbors improved dramatically after Derek's arrest. People who had been afraid to oppose Derek's harassment now felt free to be friendly and welcoming to the Thompson family. Several neighbors apologized for not speaking up sooner against Derek's behavior. Mrs. Patterson became a close family friend, often bringing fresh vegetables from her garden to share with the Thompsons. Mr. Henderson invited Marcus to join his weekly poker game. Other neighbors included the family in community events and social gatherings. 1 year after Derek's attack on the reinforced mailbox, Marcus organized a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate the anniversary. The event was held in his backyard with the famous mailbox visible in the background. Most of the neighbors attended, and everyone agreed that Millfield Springs was a much better place without Derek Morrison's anger and hatred. The mailbox continued to stand exactly where Marcus had built it, unchanged and indestructible. It received regular mail deliveries without incident. Children playing in the neighborhood learned to use it as a landmark when giving directions. It had become a symbol of standing up to bullies and refusing to be intimidated. Marcus occasionally received visits from other people facing harassment who wanted advice about handling their situations. He always encouraged them to document everything, work within the legal system, and never give up their right to live peacefully in their own homes. The most important thing is to stay calm and think strategically, Marcus would tell them. Bullies want you to react emotionally or give up entirely. If you stay smart and persistent, you can usually find a way to stop them legally. 3 years later, Marcus was promoted to a senior management position at his technology company. The news articles about his engineering solution had actually enhanced his professional reputation. Employers valued someone who could solve complex problems creatively and handle difficult situations with intelligence and patience. Sarah started a small landscaping business that became popular throughout Millfield Springs and surrounding communities. Her garden had become so beautiful that neighbors regularly asked for her advice and services. The harassment that had once made her afraid to work outside had inadvertently led to a successful new career. Maya and James grew up to be confident, resilient young people who understood the importance of standing up to injustice. They told the story of their father's famous mailbox to their friends at school and used it as an example of how intelligence could overcome hatred and bullying. The mailbox remained a local legend and a testament to the power of good engineering. It had survived 3 harsh winters, several severe storms, and countless curious visitors who wanted to test its legendary strength. Not once had it moved or shown any sign of damage. Derek Morrison eventually completed his jail sentence and probation. He moved away from Millfield Springs and started over in another state. According to reports Marcus heard through mutual acquaintances, Derek had genuinely changed his attitudes and behavior through counseling and legal consequences. Marcus felt no hatred toward Derek anymore. The harassment had been in. The aftermath of Derek's collision with the reinforced mailbox created chaos that Marcus had not fully anticipated. Within an hour of the ambulance leaving, 3 police cars arrived at Marcus's property. Officer Jenkins was among them, along with 2 other officers Marcus had never seen before. Marcus met them at his front door, trying to appear surprised and concerned about whatever incident had brought them to his home. He had practiced this moment in his mind, but facing actual police officers made him more nervous than he had expected. "Mr. Thompson," Officer Jenkins said, "we received a report that someone was injured near your mailbox this morning. Do you know anything about what happened?" Marcus shook his head and looked confused. "I heard sirens earlier, but I was working in my office. I didn't see what happened." "Is someone hurt?" One of the other officers, a younger man named Officer Davis, walked over to examine the mailbox. He tapped it with his knuckles and looked surprised by the solid sound it made. He called Jenkins over to take a look. "This is a pretty sturdy mailbox," Davis observed, "much stronger than the typical ones around here." Marcus explained that he had been having problems with vandalism and decided to build something more durable. He showed the officers photos on his phone of previous mailbox damage, including the racist graffiti and fake HOA notices. "I just wanted something that would last," Marcus said. "I'm tired of rebuilding it every few weeks." Jenkins examined the mailbox more carefully, walking around it and testing its stability. The disguised steel beam did not move at all when he pushed against it. The wooden exterior looked completely normal, but the solid construction was obvious to anyone who tested it. "Mr. Morrison claims he was jogging past your house when he tripped and fell," Jenkins said. "He says your mailbox is positioned incorrectly and caused his accident." Marcus had his property survey documents ready for exactly this type of accusation. He showed the officers that his mailbox was positioned well within his property line and met all postal regulations exactly. The placement was identical to every other mailbox in the neighborhood. "I followed all the rules when I installed it," Marcus said. "I can show you the Postal Service guidelines if you want to see them." Officer Davis was studying the ground near the mailbox. He found scuff marks on the asphalt that were consistent with someone falling or sliding across the road surface. But there were also marks that suggested Derek had been running at high speed when he hit the mailbox. "These don't look like marks from someone who tripped while jogging," Davis said to Jenkins. "It looks more like someone ran into the mailbox deliberately." Marcus offered to show the officers his security camera footage. He said he had installed cameras to document the previous vandalism incidents and might have captured whatever happened that morning. Jenkins and Davis exchanged a look that suggested they were very interested in seeing the video evidence. Inside Marcus's home office, the three officers watched the security footage in stunned silence. The video clearly showed Derek approaching the mailbox with tools, examining it carefully and then deliberately attacking it with his full body weight. There was no question that Derek had committed intentional vandalism, not suffered an accidental injury while jogging. "This changes everything," Davis said after watching the footage 3 times. "Morrison lied to us about what happened. He deliberately attacked your property and got injured in the process." Jenkins looked uncomfortable as he realized that his previous dismissals of Marcus's complaints had been completely wrong. The video evidence showed a clear pattern of criminal behavior that Jenkins had ignored for months. "Mr. Thompson, I owe you an apology," Jenkins said reluctantly. "I should have taken your earlier complaints more seriously. This video shows deliberate harassment and property destruction." Marcus accepted the apology gracefully, though he was still angry about months of being treated like he was the problem instead of the victim. The important thing now was that the police finally understood what had been happening. Officer Davis asked for copies of all the security footage from previous incidents. Marcus provided video files showing Derek and his friends destroying 8 different mailboxes over several months. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. "We'll need to arrest Morrison as soon as he's released from the hospital," Davis said. "This is clearly criminal vandalism, harassment, and possibly hate crimes given the racial slurs we can see in some of this footage." The officers also wanted to question Derek's 2 companions who had been present during the morning's incident. Marcus provided clear images of their faces from the security cameras. Jenkins recognized both men as local residents who had been involved in minor legal troubles before. After the police left, Marcus felt a sense of relief mixed with anticipation. Derek was hospitalized with serious injuries, facing multiple criminal charges and would probably be sued for all the previous property damage. The months of harassment were finally over, but the story was far from finished. Word of Derek's accident spread quickly through Millfield Springs. By evening, Marcus had received visits from several neighbors who wanted to hear his version of what had happened. Mrs. Patterson was the first to stop by. She had heard about the ambulance and police cars and was concerned about Marcus's family. When Marcus explained that Derek had been injured while trying to vandalize the mailbox, Mrs. Patterson was shocked but not entirely surprised. "I knew Derek had anger problems," she said, "but I never imagined he was the one destroying your mailbox all this time." "How badly was he hurt?" Marcus had called the hospital to check on Derek's condition. The receptionist could only confirm that Derek was being treated for shoulder and rib injuries, but was in stable condition. Marcus genuinely hoped that Derek would recover fully. Despite everything that had happened, other neighbors had more interesting reactions to the news. Mr. Henderson from across the street seemed almost amused by Derek's misfortune. "I always thought Derek was a bully," Henderson said. "He tried to tell everyone what to do with their property and acted like he was the neighborhood police. Maybe this will teach him some humility, but not everyone was supportive of Marcus." Mrs. Carlson from 2 houses down made it clear that she thought Marcus had created a dangerous trap that could have killed someone. "You can't just build something like that without warning people," she argued. "What if a child had run into your mailbox? Someone could have been seriously hurt." Marcus patiently explained that his mailbox met all safety regulations and was positioned entirely on his own property. Children had no reason to run into it and adults had no right to attack it. Derek's injuries were the result of his own criminal behavior, not any design flaw in the mailbox. The most significant conversation came when Derek's wife, Linda Morrison, arrived at Marcus's door that evening. She looked tired and upset, but also embarrassed about her husband's behavior. "I came to apologize for what Derek did," Linda said. "I had no idea he was harassing your family. If I had known, I would have stopped him months ago." Marcus invited Linda inside and showed her some of the security footage. Linda watched her husband's attacks on the mailboxes with growing horror and shame. "This is not the man I married," she said through tears. "Derek used to be kind and reasonable. I don't know what happened to change him into someone who would do these terrible things." Linda explained that Derek had been under a lot of stress at work and had become obsessed with neighborhood politics and property values. He had started spending time online reading websites that filled him with anger about immigration and demographic changes. The Community Safety Patrol had given him a way to act on those feelings. "I'm going to make sure he gets help," Linda promised. "Professional counseling and anger management classes. And I want to pay for all the damage he caused to your property." Marcus appreciated Linda's apology and her offer to make financial restitution, but he made it clear that Derek would also need to face legal consequences for his actions. The harassment had gone on too long and been too severe to be resolved with just an apology and payment. That night, Marcus sat with his family and reflected on how dramatically their situation had changed in just one day. For months they had lived in fear of Derek's next attack. Now Derek was in the hospital facing criminal charges and would probably never bother them again. "I'm proud of how you handled this," Sarah told Marcus. "You could have gotten violent or tried to hurt Derek deliberately. Instead, you used your brain to solve the problem legally and safely." Maya and James were excited about the video footage of Derek bouncing off the mailbox. They wanted to watch it over and over again. Marcus limited their viewing time, but he understood their fascination. After months of feeling helpless against Derek's bullying, it was satisfying to see him face consequences for his actions. As the family prepared for bed, Marcus walked outside to look at his engineering masterpiece one more time. The mailbox stood exactly where he had placed it, unchanged and undamaged despite Derek's most violent attack. It would probably outlast the house itself. But more importantly, the mailbox had served its purpose. Derek Morrison's reign of terror was over. Marcus and his family could finally enjoy their dream home without fear of harassment or intimidation. The war was over, and Marcus had won it through intelligence, patience. The final weekend arrived with perfect autumn weather. Marcus woke up early on Saturday morning and immediately checked his security cameras. Derek's group had not made any overnight attacks, which meant they would probably stick to their usual Tuesday or Thursday schedule. This gave Marcus time to make final preparations for what he now thought of as the grand finale. Marcus spent Saturday morning testing his camera system one more time. He had positioned 4 different cameras to capture the mailbox area from every possible angle. The main camera had crystal clear resolution and could zoom in close enough to read facial expressions. 2 side cameras would show the approach and aftermath. A wide-angle camera would capture the entire scene for context. He also tested the motion sensors and lighting system. If Derek attacked at night or in early morning darkness, powerful LED floodlights would automatically illuminate the entire area. The cameras had excellent night vision, but Marcus wanted to make sure nothing was missed due to poor lighting conditions. Tom stopped by Saturday afternoon to inspect the finished mailbox one final time. The concrete foundation had been curing for over a week and was now at maximum strength. The steel I-beam was embedded so deeply that it had become part of the earth itself. The wooden exterior covering looked weathered and natural, as if it had been there for years. "This is a work of art," Tom said as he examined their creation. "It looks exactly like every other mailbox in the neighborhood, but it's actually stronger than most building columns I've designed." Tom tapped the wooden surface with his knuckles. The sound was solid and dense, but not obviously different from a normal wooden post. Someone would have to hit it very hard to realize that there was steel underneath the decorative exterior. "What do you think will happen when Derek tries his usual shoulder slam?" Marcus asked. Tom grinned. "Physics says that all the energy Derek puts into the impact will bounce back into his body. The mailbox won't move even a fraction of an inch. Derek, on the other hand, is going to experience what engineers call an inelastic collision with a fixed object. In plain English, that means he's going to hurt himself badly," Tom continued. "Probably a dislocated shoulder, maybe some broken ribs. And that's if he's lucky and doesn't hit his head on the ground when he bounces backward." Marcus felt a moment of concern about potentially causing serious injury. But then he remembered all the months of harassment, the racist graffiti, the fake legal notices, and the fear in his children's eyes. Derek had chosen to escalate this conflict. He had ignored multiple opportunities to stop the harassment peacefully. "I'm not forcing him to attack my mailbox," Marcus reminded himself. "If he gets hurt, it's because he chose to commit a crime on my property." Sarah was more nervous as the weekend progressed. She kept checking the cameras and looking out the windows for signs of Derek or his friends. The waiting was harder than the previous months of regular attacks because now they knew something big was about to happen. "What if Derek brings tools and tries to dig up the foundation?" she asked Marcus on Sunday evening. Marcus explained that the concrete extended 4 feet underground and was reinforced with steel bars. It would take professional excavation equipment to remove it. Derek might damage his shovels or pickaxes, but he would not be able to dig up the foundation by hand. "Besides," Marcus added, "Derek has always used the same technique. He runs at the mailbox and hits it with his body weight. That's worked every time before, so he has no reason to change his approach." Monday passed without incident. Derek's group jogged past the house at their usual time but did not stop or slow down. Marcus wondered if they were planning something special, or just waiting for the right moment. Tuesday morning brought the confrontation that Marcus had been anticipating for weeks. He was working in his home office when his phone buzzed with a motion alert from the security system. Marcus quickly opened the camera app and saw 3 familiar figures approaching his mailbox. Derek Morrison was in the lead, followed by his 2 regular companions. They were not jogging this time. They walked with purpose directly toward the mailbox, looking around to make sure no one was watching them. Derek carried what appeared to be a small crowbar, while one of his friends had a hammer. Marcus called softly to Sarah and the kids to gather in his office. They all crowded around his computer screen to watch the live camera feed. This was the moment they had been waiting for, and Marcus wanted his family to see Derek's plan backfire in real time. "Remember to stay quiet," Marcus whispered. "We don't want them to know we're watching." Derek and his friends spent several minutes examining the new mailbox. They walked around it, looking at the construction from different angles. Derek tapped the wooden post with his crowbar, testing its strength. The sound was solid, but not obviously different from what he might expect from a thick wooden beam. "He has no idea what he's looking at," Tom had said during one of their planning sessions. "The disguise is perfect. He thinks he's dealing with another wooden post that might be a little sturdier than the previous ones." Derek positioned himself about 10 feet away from the mailbox and handed his crowbar to one of his friends. He was clearly planning to use his signature shoulder ram technique. He had used this same approach to destroy 8 previous mailboxes, and it had worked every time. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as Derek prepared for his attack. Months of planning and preparation were about to be tested. Either Marcus's engineering solution would work perfectly, or Derek would discover the trap and find some other way to cause damage. Derek took several deep breaths and stretched his shoulders like an athlete preparing for competition. He clearly took pride in his ability to destroy Marcus's mailboxes efficiently. This was probably the highlight of his week, the moment when he felt powerful and in control. He looked so confident, Maya whispered as they watched Derek's preparation routine. "That's about to change," Marcus replied softly. Derek began his approach with a slow jog that built up speed as he got closer to the mailbox. His form was actually quite good, with his shoulder positioned to deliver maximum force to the wooden post. He had obviously practiced this technique and refined it over the course of his previous attacks. But as Derek closed the final few feet to his target, Marcus noticed something in the man's expression that he had never seen before. For just a moment, Derek's confidence seemed to waver. Something about the mailbox looked different from the others, though Derek could not identify exactly what. It was too late to change course. Derek had committed to his attack run and could not stop his momentum. His shoulder struck the disguised steel I-beam with the full force of his body weight and running speed. The impact made a sound like a car crash. Derek's shoulder hit the immovable steel beam and stopped instantly, but the rest of his body continued forward until physics took control. The energy of his attack had nowhere to go except back into his own body. Derek flew backward through the air and landed hard on the asphalt road. He rolled several times before coming to a stop about 15 feet from the mailbox. His friends stood frozen in shock, unsure of what had just happened or what they should do next. The mailbox stood exactly where it had been before Derek's attack. It had not moved even a tiny fraction of an inch. There was not a scratch on the wooden exterior or any sign that it had been struck by a 200-pound man running at full speed. Derek lay on the ground, moaning and holding his shoulder. Even from the security camera footage, Marcus could see that something was seriously wrong with Derek's arm. It was positioned at an unnatural angle and Derek's face showed intense pain. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. "Is he okay?" Marcus felt a complex mixture of emotions as he watched Derek writhing on the ground. Part of him was satisfied that his plan had worked perfectly, but seeing another human being in obvious pain was not something he could enjoy, even when that person had been terrorizing his family. "He'll be okay," Marcus said, "but I think his mailbox-destroying days are over." Derek's friends finally overcame their shock and rushed to help him. They tried to lift Derek to his feet, but he screamed in pain when they moved his injured arm. It was clear that Derek needed immediate medical attention. One of Derek's companions pulled out his cell phone and called 911. Marcus could not hear the conversation through his camera system, but the man was clearly requesting an ambulance. The other friend kept asking Derek what had happened and how he was injured so badly. Derek was in too much pain to give coherent answers. He kept staring at the mailbox in confusion and disbelief. He had used the same attack method dozens of times before. He could not understand why this time had been so catastrophically different. Within 10 minutes, an ambulance arrived with flashing lights and sirens. 2 paramedics quickly assessed Derek's condition and confirmed that he had serious injuries. They carefully loaded him onto a stretcher and drove away toward the hospital. Derek's 2 friends remained behind, looking confused and frightened. They whispered to each other while staring at Marcus's mailbox. One of them approached it cautiously and tapped it with his hand. The solid sound seemed to surprise him. "I think they're starting to figure out that this isn't a normal mailbox," Marcus said to his family. Marcus chose the weekend of November 15th for his special construction project. He had checked the weather forecast and confirmed that Derek's jogging group typically took Sundays off. This would give him 2 full days to complete the work without interruption or suspicious observers. On Friday evening, Marcus loaded his truck with all the materials he had been collecting. The steel I-beam was the heaviest piece, weighing over 200 pounds. Tom had helped him select a beam that was designed for commercial construction. It was rated to support building loads much greater than anything Derek could throw at it. The concrete alone would weigh more than 1,000 pounds when mixed. Marcus had calculated that he would need 12 bags of high-strength concrete mix, plus steel reinforcement bars and wire mesh. The foundation he was planning would be stronger than what most houses used for their basements. Sarah helped him organize the tools and materials in the garage. She had gotten caught up in the excitement of the project despite her initial concerns. Seeing Marcus take control of the situation, instead of just accepting the harassment had made her feel hopeful again. "Can't believe you're going to build all this," Just to stop those jerks, she said, as they stacked bags of concrete. But I'm proud of you for fighting back instead of giving up. Maya and James were fascinated by the engineering drawings Tom had created. The technical diagrams showed how every piece would fit together. The kids asked dozens of questions about why certain materials were needed and how the finished mailbox would work. It's like building a fortress, James said. But it looks like a regular mailbox from the outside. That's the best part, Maya added. The bad men won't know how strong it is until they try to break it. Marcus spent Saturday morning digging the foundation hole. It was much larger than what anyone would expect for a mailbox. 4 feet deep, 3 feet wide, and perfectly square. The excavation work was exhausting, but Marcus felt energized by the progress he was making. Tom arrived at noon to help with the technical aspects of the construction. He brought professional-grade tools and his expertise in structural engineering. Together, they positioned the steel reinforcement bars in the bottom of the hole and connected them according to the engineering specifications. This foundation could support a small building, Tom said as they worked. No human being is going to be able to move whatever we put on top of it. The steel I-beam came next. It had to be positioned exactly according to postal regulations for height and distance from the road, but it also had to be perfectly vertical and aligned with the reinforcement bars. Marcus and Tom used a laser level and multiple measurements to get everything precise. Engineering is all about the details, Marcus explained to his kids as they watched. If we get the measurements wrong, the whole project fails. The concrete mixing and pouring took the rest of Saturday afternoon. Marcus had rented a small cement mixer to handle the large volume needed. They mixed and poured in batches, making sure each layer bonded properly with the previous one. As the concrete surrounded the steel beam and filled the foundation hole, Marcus felt a deep satisfaction. This was not just about stopping Derek anymore. It was about proving to himself that he could overcome any challenge through careful planning and hard work. How long until it's strong enough? Sarah asked as they finished the final pour. Concrete reaches about 50% strength in 3 days, Tom explained. But it keeps getting harder for weeks. By next weekend, this foundation will be practically indestructible. Sunday was devoted to the finishing touches that would make the mailbox look completely normal. Marcus carefully cut and fitted wooden boards around the steel I-beam. He used the same type of wood and stain that was popular throughout the neighborhood. From the outside, it would be impossible to tell that there was anything unusual about the construction. The mailbox itself required special attention. Marcus had purchased a standard black metal postal box that looked identical to dozens of others in Millfield Springs, but inside Tom had welded a steel frame that would distribute any impact force throughout the structure. If someone kicks this mailbox, it's going to feel like kicking a brick wall, Tom said as they mounted it on top of the disguised steel beam. Marcus installed the new mailbox exactly where the previous ones had been positioned. The height was perfect according to postal regulations. The distance from the road matched every other mailbox on the street. Even the decorative details were copied from neighboring properties. The only difference was invisible. Beneath the ordinary wooden appearance was a steel and concrete monument that could withstand hurricane-force winds or earthquake tremors. Derek Morrison had no idea what he would be attacking the next time he tried to destroy Marcus's mailbox. While they worked, several neighbors walked or drove past the property. Most of them waved politely and continued on their way. A few stopped to make small talk about the weekend project. "Looks like you're building a really nice mailbox there," said Mr. Henderson from across the street, much sturdier than the standard ones most of us have. Marcus smiled and thanked him for the compliment. If only Mr. Henderson knew just how sturdy the new mailbox really was. But the whole point was to keep the special construction secret until Derek discovered it the hard way. Mrs. Patterson came by on Sunday evening as Marcus was cleaning up his tools. She admired the finished mailbox and commented on how professional it looked. "I hope this one lasts longer than the others," she said sympathetically. "It's terrible that someone keeps destroying your property." Marcus assured her that he was confident this mailbox would be much more durable. He did not mention that it was designed to be completely indestructible. That would remain his secret until Derek provided the test. The hardest part was waiting for the concrete to fully cure. Marcus knew that Derek would probably attack again within a few days, but the foundation needed time to reach maximum strength. He had built something that would last forever, but it needed a week to become truly immovable. During that waiting period, Marcus upgraded his security camera system one final time. He added a high-definition camera with excellent night vision and zoom capability. He also installed cameras at multiple angles to capture every possible view of the mailbox area. This time, Marcus wanted perfect documentation of what would happen when Derek encountered his engineering masterpiece. The footage would be valuable evidence if the incident led to legal action. But more importantly, Marcus wanted to watch Derek's reaction when his usual tactics failed spectacularly. Tom stopped by midweek to check on the concrete curing process. He tapped the foundation with a hammer and listened to the sound it made. The dull thud indicated that the concrete had reached full density and hardness. "This is ready for anything now," Tom declared. "I've seen building foundations that weren't this solid. Whatever hits this mailbox is going to bounce right off." Marcus felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness as the week progressed. He had spent months being a victim of Derek's harassment. Soon he would find out if his carefully engineered solution would end the problem permanently. On Thursday evening, Marcus checked his security cameras and saw Derek's jogging group making their usual route past his house. They slowed down as they approached the new mailbox, clearly studying its construction. Derek pointed at it and said something to his companions that Marcus could not hear through the camera audio. But their body language was clear. Derek was already planning his next attack. He probably thought Marcus was getting desperate by building such an elaborate mailbox. Derek had no way of knowing that he was looking at a trap that had been specifically designed for him. Friday night, Marcus gathered his family in the living room for a final discussion about what might happen over the weekend. He explained that Derek would probably try to destroy the new mailbox just like he had destroyed all the others. "But this time will be different," Marcus said. "Derek is going to discover that bullying has consequences, and we're going to have video proof of everything that happens." Sarah asked if they should stay inside when Derek attacked. Marcus said it would be safer for everyone to remain in the house until the incident was over. But he promised that after this weekend, they would not have to worry about Derek Morrison anymore. As the family went to bed on Friday night, Marcus felt more confident than he had in months. Tomorrow, Derek would learn that Marcus Thompson was not the easy target he appeared to be. The war over the mailbox was about to end with a victory that Derek would never forget. Marcus approached his revenge plan the same way he approached complex software problems at work. He broke it down into smaller pieces, researched every detail, and looked for weaknesses in his opponent's strategy. If Derek Morrison wanted a war, Marcus would give him one, but it would be fought with intelligence, not violence. The first step was understanding the legal landscape completely. Marcus spent his evenings reading federal postal regulations, state property laws, and local building codes. He discovered that mailboxes were more heavily regulated than most people realized. The United States Postal Service had specific requirements for height, placement, and construction. But within those rules, there was room for creativity. Marcus learned that his property line extended exactly 5 feet beyond where his mailbox currently sat. He had been placing it closer to the road than necessary, probably making it easier for Derek to attack. If he moved the mailbox back to the actual property line, it would be harder for someone to hit it while pretending to jog on the public road. But location was just the beginning. Marcus dove deep into mailbox construction standards. The USPS recommended that posts be set in concrete for stability. The regulations allowed for various materials as long as the final result met safety and visibility requirements. There was nothing in the rules that prevented him from building something much stronger than the basic wooden posts most people used. Marcus contacted his friend Tom Rodriguez, who worked as a structural engineer for the city. Tom had helped design bridges and buildings that needed to withstand earthquakes and hurricanes. If anyone could help Marcus build an indestructible mailbox, it was Tom. "So you want something that looks normal but can't be knocked down?" Tom asked when Marcus explained his situation. "That's actually an interesting engineering challenge." Marcus showed Tom the security footage of Derek destroying his previous mailboxes. Tom watched the attacks with professional interest, noting how Derek used leverage and momentum to break the wooden posts. "His technique is pretty good, actually," Tom said. "He's hitting the weak points and using his body weight effectively. A standard wooden post doesn't stand a chance against that kind of focused attack." Tom explained that the key was creating something that would absorb no energy from an impact. If Derek expected the mailbox to break or bend, and instead it remained completely solid, all of that force would bounce back into Derek's body. Think of it like punching a wall versus punching a pillow, Tom said. The wall doesn't move, so all the energy goes back into your fist. That's what you want here. They spent several evenings designing the perfect mailbox. It had to look completely normal from the outside. It had to meet all postal regulations exactly, but underneath the ordinary appearance, it would be engineered to withstand incredible force. The foundation would be the key element. Instead of digging a simple hole and filling it with concrete, they would create a massive underground anchor. The hole would be 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide. It would be filled with steel-reinforced concrete that would cure into something harder than most building foundations. The post itself would be a steel I-beam wrapped in decorative wood. The I-beam would be embedded deep into the concrete foundation and extend exactly to the required height for the mailbox. The wooden covering would make it look like every other mailbox in the neighborhood, but the steel core would make it virtually indestructible. Even the mailbox itself could be reinforced. Tom suggested using a standard-looking postal box but adding a steel frame inside. If Derek tried to kick or hit the box, he would discover that it was much harder than it appeared. Marcus spent weeks researching suppliers and materials. He needed to buy everything quietly and avoid drawing attention to his project. He ordered the steel I-beam from a construction company in the next town. He bought concrete and reinforcement materials from 3 different stores. He purchased the decorative wood and standard mailbox from a 4th location. While planning the construction, Marcus also researched Derek Morrison's background more thoroughly. He found property records, business licenses, and legal documents that painted a picture of a man who was used to getting his way through intimidation. Derek owned a small construction company that specialized in home renovations. He had been sued twice by customers who claimed he did poor work and overcharged them. Both cases had been settled out of court, which suggested that Derek preferred to avoid legal scrutiny. Marcus found social media posts going back several years that showed Derek's pattern of behavior. He had complained about every new family that moved into Millfield Springs. He had organized petition drives against a proposed affordable housing development. He had written angry letters to the local newspaper about outsiders, changing the neighborhood character. The most revealing discovery was a thread of comments Derek had made on a neighborhood social media group. Someone had posted about property values and whether new residents were good for the community. Derek's responses were barely disguised racism mixed with fear-mongering about crime and property maintenance. Some people just don't fit in here, Derek had written. They have different values and different standards. If we don't maintain our community identity, everything we've built will fall apart. Marcus screenshot every comment and post. If Derek's harassment ever went to court, this evidence would show a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. It would prove that the mailbox attacks were not random vandalism but targeted harassment based on race. Marcus also researched the legal concept of attractive nuisance and liability for injuries on private property. If Derek hurt himself while attacking the reinforced mailbox, could Marcus be held responsible? The answer was reassuring. Property owners were not liable for injuries to people who were trespassing and committing crimes. In fact, Marcus discovered several court cases where vandals had injured themselves on reinforced property and tried to sue the owners. The courts consistently ruled that criminal activity negated any liability claims. If Derek got hurt while destroying Marcus's mailbox, the responsibility would be entirely his own. The research phase took 6 weeks. Marcus read hundreds of pages of regulations, legal precedents, and engineering specifications. He consulted with Tom about stress calculations and impact resistance. He priced out materials and planned every step of the construction process. Sarah was initially skeptical about the plan. She worried that building a trap for Derek would make the harassment worse. What if Derek figured out what Marcus was doing and escalated to more serious crimes? He's already escalating, Marcus pointed out. The spray paint and fake notices show that he's not going to stop. If anything, he's getting more confident because he thinks I won't fight back. Marcus showed Sarah the legal research he had done. Everything he planned to do was completely legal. He would be building a regulation-compliant mailbox on his own property using approved materials and methods. If Derek got injured while committing a crime, that was Derek's problem, not theirs. Think of it like installing a security system, Marcus explained. We have the right to protect our property. This is just a more permanent solution than cameras and alarms. Maya and James were excited about the project when Marcus explained it in simple terms. He told them he was building a special mailbox that would be too strong for the bad men to break. They asked if they could help with the construction. Marcus said they could watch from a safe distance and maybe help paint the wooden covering. As October turned to November, Marcus finalized his plans and gathered all the materials. The concrete would need time to cure properly, so he would have to work quickly once he started. The whole project would need to be completed over a single weekend to avoid drawing attention from Derek or curious neighbors. Marcus felt a sense of anticipation as he prepared for the construction phase. For months he had been reactive, simply rebuilding after each attack. Now he was taking control of the situation. Derek Morrison thought he was dealing with a victim who would eventually give up and move away. Derek had no idea that he was actually dealing with an engineer who specialized in solving impossible problems. The mailbox that Marcus was about to build would be his masterpiece. It would look completely ordinary, but it would be strong enough to stop a truck. In a few days, Derek would discover that his easy target had become an immovable object. The collision between Derek's unstoppable arrogance and Marcus's unmovable mailbox was going to be spectacular. The harassment escalated after Marcus started using stronger materials for his mailbox. Derek Morrison and his two friends seemed to take it as a personal challenge. What began as simple destruction turned into something much more sinister. On a cold October morning, Marcus discovered that someone had spray-painted ugly words on his driveway during the night. The bright red letters spelled out racial slurs that made his stomach turn. His daughter Maya saw them before he could clean them up. She asked what the words meant. Marcus felt his heart break as he tried to explain that some people used bad language to hurt others because of their skin color. Sarah found him scrubbing the concrete with bleach and hot water at 6 in the morning. She stood in the doorway wearing her robe and crying. This was supposed to be their safe place. Their dream home had turned into a nightmare. She asked if they should consider moving somewhere else. Marcus stopped scrubbing and looked at his wife. He understood her fear. The harassment was affecting their whole family now. But moving would mean letting the bullies win. It would mean giving up everything they had worked for. He was not ready to surrender. "We're not leaving," he said firmly. "This is our home. We have every right to be here." The security cameras captured Derek and his friends returning that same evening. This time they came prepared with more spray paint and what looked like a hammer. They destroyed Marcus's 8th mailbox with extra violence, smashing it into pieces too small to rebuild. Then they painted more hateful messages on the road near his driveway. But the worst part was what they left behind. A fake official notice was taped to his front door. It was designed to look like it came from the Homeowners Association. The letter claimed that Marcus's mailbox violated community standards. It demanded that he install a regulation-compliant mailbox within 7 days or face fines. Marcus studied the fake notice carefully. The letterhead looked professional, but the language was wrong. Real HOA documents used specific legal terms. This letter was full of spelling errors and threatening language that no legitimate organization would use. It was clearly meant to intimidate and confuse him. The next morning, Marcus walked through his neighborhood to examine other mailboxes. What he found made him even angrier. Every single mailbox on his street was identical to the ones he had been installing. Same wooden posts, same black metal boxes, same placement near the road. If his mailbox violated community standards, then every mailbox in Millfield Springs was also in violation. Marcus took photos of dozens of mailboxes to document the hypocrisy. He also noticed something else during his walk. Several neighbors saw him taking pictures and quickly went back inside their houses. Others watched him from their windows but looked away when he waved. The word was spreading that he was causing trouble. Mrs. Patterson was working in her garden when Marcus walked past her house. She looked embarrassed and avoided eye contact at first. Finally, she called him over. "I heard about what happened to your driveway," she said quietly. "I'm sorry people are being so cruel." Marcus thanked her for her concern. Then he asked if she knew anything about the fake HOA notice. Mrs. Patterson looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Derek Morrison is on the HOA board," she whispered. "He's been telling people that your family is bringing down property values. He says new residents need to follow all the rules exactly or they should leave." She explained that Derek had been using his position on the board to investigate Marcus's property. He was looking for any violations he could find. The fake notice was probably his way of trying to create legal justification for the harassment. "But that's not how it really works," Mrs. Patterson said. The HOA here is pretty relaxed. We don't have strict mailbox rules. Derek is making things up. Marcus asked if other neighbors supported Derek's actions. Mrs. Patterson looked uncomfortable. Most people just want to avoid trouble, she said. Derek can be very aggressive when he doesn't get his way. Some folks are scared to speak up against him. That afternoon, Marcus drove to the real HOA office in town. The secretary was a kind older woman named Betty, who seemed genuinely confused by his visit. She had never heard of any mailbox regulations. She showed him the actual HOA bylaws, which said almost nothing about mailboxes except that they should be reasonably maintained. "We've never fined anyone for mailbox violations," Betty said. "Most of the rules here are about grass height and fence colors. Basic stuff to keep the neighborhood looking nice." Marcus showed her the fake notice he had received. Betty was shocked and angry. She said Derek Morrison had no authority to send official HOA communications without board approval. What he had done was illegal and could get him removed from his position. "I'll bring this up at our next board meeting," Betty promised. This kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. But Marcus knew that waiting for the HOA to act might take months. Meanwhile, the harassment was getting worse. His family was suffering, and Derek seemed to be gaining confidence. The attacks became more frequent and more creative. Derek and his friends started coming by at different times of day. Sometimes they would jog past very slowly and stare at the house. Other times they would stop near the mailbox and have loud conversations about property values and neighborhood safety. Sarah became afraid to get the mail by herself. She would wait until Marcus came home from work or ask the kids to go with her. Maya and James started taking longer routes to school to avoid walking past Derek's house. The family that had been excited about having space to explore now felt trapped in their own home. The psychological pressure was intense. Marcus would wake up several times each night to check the security cameras. Every noise outside made him alert. He installed motion sensor lights around his property and considered getting a guard dog. One evening, Derek's harassment took a new form. Instead of destroying the mailbox, he and his friends set up folding chairs on the public road near Marcus's driveway. They sat there for 2 hours, drinking beer and talking loudly about crime statistics and immigration. They were technically not on Marcus's property, so he could not make them leave. The message was clear. Derek was showing Marcus that he could make his life miserable whenever he wanted. The road was public space, and Derek could use it to intimidate and harass without breaking any laws. Marcus called Officer Jenkins again, but the response was the same as before. Jenkins said that sitting on a public road was not illegal. He suggested that Marcus try talking to Derek directly to resolve their differences. "Maybe if you approached him in a friendly way, you could work something out," Jenkins said. "Sometimes these situations just need better communication." Marcus wanted to scream. He was being terrorized in his own neighborhood, and the police were telling him to be friendlier to his attackers. The system that was supposed to protect him was failing completely. That night, Marcus sat in his home office and made a decision. Waiting for help from others was not working. The police would not act. The HOA moved too slowly. His neighbors were too scared to get involved. If he wanted to protect his family and keep his home, he would have to find another way. He opened his laptop and started researching. There had to be a legal solution that would stop Derek Morrison permanently. Marcus was good at solving complex problems. He had built a successful career by finding creative answers when others gave up. As he worked late into the night, Marcus began to form a plan. Derek thought he was dealing with someone who would eventually surrender and move away, but Derek had no idea what he was really up against. Marcus had spent his whole life overcoming obstacles that others thought were impossible. The war for his mailbox was about to take a very different turn. Marcus rebuilt his mailbox for the 4th time in 2 months. He made it stronger with metal reinforcement inside the wooden post. He painted it the same brown color as before and mounted it in the exact same spot. But this time he added something new. He installed a small security camera in the oak tree nearby. The camera was not expensive, but it had good resolution and night vision. Marcus positioned it to capture everything that happened near his mailbox. He connected it to his phone so he could check the footage from anywhere. If someone was targeting his property, he would have proof. Sarah was not happy about needing a camera. She said it made her feel like they were living in a war zone instead of their dream home. The kids asked why someone kept breaking their mailbox. Marcus tried to explain without scaring them. He said some people did not like change and they needed time to get used to new neighbors. The camera caught the next attack 3 days later. Marcus was at work when his phone buzzed with an alert. He opened the app and watched 3 figures approach his mailbox. Even in the early morning light, he could see they were the joggers from the Community Safety Patrol. They were not jogging this time. They walked straight to his mailbox with purpose. The tall blonde man kicked the post while the bearded one pulled on the mailbox itself. The muscular one acted as a lookout. They worked together like they had done this before. Within 2 minutes, his mailbox was destroyed again. They left the pieces scattered on the ground and jogged away like nothing had happened. Marcus felt his hands shake as he watched the footage. This was not random vandalism or accidents. These men were deliberately targeting his property. The question was why. He had never spoken to them beyond a polite wave. He had done nothing to upset anyone in the neighborhood. The only thing that made him different from other residents was the color of his skin. That evening, Marcus showed the video to Sarah. She was furious and scared at the same time. She wanted to call the police immediately. Marcus agreed that it was time to involve law enforcement. He had clear evidence of a crime. The men's faces were visible in the footage. There was no doubt about what had happened. Officer Jenkins arrived an hour later. He was a middle-aged white man who seemed professional at first. Marcus showed him the video on his laptop. Jenkins watched it twice without saying much. Then he asked questions that surprised Marcus. "Are you sure you did not do anything to upset these men?" Jenkins asked. "Sometimes new residents don't understand local customs. Maybe there was a misunderstanding." Marcus explained that he had barely interacted with the joggers. He had been nothing but polite to everyone in the neighborhood. Jenkins nodded but did not seem convinced. "Look, Mr. Thompson," Jenkins said, "this appears to be a neighborhood dispute. These things usually work themselves out if people just talk to each other. Maybe you should try speaking with these men directly." Sarah could not stay quiet any longer. "They destroyed our property 4 times, she said. "We have video evidence. Why are you not arresting them?" Jenkins sighed. "Ma'am, mailbox vandalism is usually considered a misdemeanor. Without significant damage amounts, it's hard to pursue. And these men might have their own side of the story." Marcus felt his hope sink. The police officer was treating him like the problem instead of the victim. He asked what he should do if it happened again. Jenkins said to file a report and they would look into it. But his tone suggested that nothing would actually happen. After Jenkins left, Marcus called his brother David in the city. David was a lawyer who specialized in civil rights cases. He listened to the whole story and asked to see the video. After watching it, David was quiet for a long time. "This is harassment based on race," David finally said. "The pattern is too clear to ignore. These men are trying to intimidate you into leaving." David explained that Marcus had several options. He could file complaints with the sheriff's department and demand better action. He could contact the FBI about possible civil rights violations. He could sue the men individually for harassment and property damage. But David also warned him about the challenges. Small-town law enforcement often protected locals over outsiders. Civil rights cases took years to resolve. Lawsuits were expensive and might make the harassment worse. The best evidence would be showing a clear pattern over time. "Document everything," David advised. "Keep rebuilding that mailbox and keep recording. The more evidence you have, the stronger your case becomes." Marcus installed 2 more cameras the next day. One pointed down the road to catch the men approaching. Another captured the area around his entire driveway. He also started keeping a written log of every incident with dates, times, and descriptions. The 5th attack came on a Thursday morning. This time the men brought tools. Marcus watched on his phone as they used a crowbar to break the reinforced post. They seemed frustrated that it was taking more effort than before. The bearded man kicked the pieces across the road when they were done. Marcus drove home during his lunch break to clean up the mess. His neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was working in her garden nearby. She came over to talk. "I'm sorry this keeps happening to you," she said. "I saw those men this morning. They were making a lot of noise." Marcus asked if she knew who they were. Mrs. Patterson looked uncomfortable but finally answered. "The tall one is Derek Morrison. He lives in the big house on Maple Street. He started that patrol group last year after some teenagers were caught drinking beer in the park." She explained that Derek had convinced several neighbors that crime was increasing. He organized volunteers to jog through the neighborhood and report suspicious activity. The group had about a dozen members, but only 3 were very active. Most people thought it was harmless, Mrs. Patterson said, but Derek takes it very seriously. He acts like he's a real police officer sometimes. Marcus asked if Derek had problems with other neighbors. Mrs. Patterson shook her head but looked away. He's always been polite to me, she said, but I heard he was not happy about new people moving in.
He said the neighborhood was changing too fast. That night, Marcus researched Derek Morrison online.
He found social media posts that made his blood boil. Derek shared articles about property values and neighborhood safety. He made comments about certain people bringing crime to suburban areas. He posted photos of his patrol group with captions about protecting real Americans. The pattern was becoming clear. Derek and his friends were not just vandalizing his mailbox for fun. They were trying to send a message. They wanted Marcus and his family to feel unwelcome and unsafe. They hoped that constant harassment would convince them to move away. Marcus rebuilt his mailbox for the 6th time. But now he had a different attitude. This was not just about replacing damaged property anymore. This was about standing up to bullies who thought they could intimidate him into abandoning his dream home. He upgraded his security system with professional-grade cameras and better lighting. He started taking photos of the damage from multiple angles. He measured the scattered pieces and documented the cost of replacement materials. He was building a case that even small-town police could not ignore. The harassment was taking a toll on his family. Sarah jumped every time she heard noise outside. Maya asked why those men hated them. James started having nightmares about bad people coming to their house. Marcus felt guilty for putting his family through this stress, but he also felt determined. His grandparents had faced much worse discrimination and never gave up. His parents had worked multiple jobs to give him opportunities they never had. He would not let a few racist bullies destroy everything he had worked to achieve. As he installed his 7th mailbox in 3 months, Marcus made a promise to himself. He would find a way to stop Derek Morrison and his friends. They had chosen the wrong family to mess with. Marcus was just getting started. Marcus Thompson stood at the edge of his new property and smiled. After 20 years of hard work, he finally owned his dream home. 5 acres of green land stretched out before him. Rolling hills covered in grass went as far as he could see. Old oak trees provided shade near the white farmhouse. A long gravel driveway led from the main road to his front door. At 45 years old, Marcus had worked every day to make this moment happen. He started as a junior programmer at a small tech company. He worked late nights and weekends. He took extra projects. He saved every penny he could. His wife Sarah supported him through all of it. She worked 2 jobs while he built his career. Their 2 children, Maya and James, grew up knowing that their parents were working toward something bigger. The house in Millfield Springs cost more than Marcus had ever imagined spending, but it was perfect. The nearest neighbor lived half a mile away. The property had a small barn and space for horses someday. Sarah could have her garden. The kids would have room to play and explore. After years of living in small apartments in the city, this felt like paradise. Millfield Springs was different from where they used to live. The city had people from all backgrounds. Here, Marcus noticed right away that almost everyone was white. At the grocery store, people stared. At the gas station, conversation stopped when he walked in. But Marcus was used to being the only black person in many places. His job in tech had taught him how to handle it. He would be polite and professional. He would prove himself through his actions. On moving day, a few neighbors came by. They seemed friendly enough. Mrs. Patterson from down the road brought cookies. Mr. Jensen offered to help move boxes. They asked about his work and family. They welcomed him to the neighborhood. Marcus felt hopeful that things would go well. The first week went smoothly. Marcus set up his home office. Sarah planted flowers in the front yard. Maya and James explored every corner of the property. They found a creek at the back edge of the land. They discovered an old treehouse in the biggest oak tree. Everything felt right. Marcus installed a simple mailbox at the end of his driveway. It was basic and practical. Brown wooden post with a black metal box on top. Nothing fancy, but it did the job. The mailbox sat about 10 feet from the main road, just like all the others in the neighborhood. The postal worker, an older man named Bill, stopped by on the 3rd day. He seemed nice and made small talk about the weather. He mentioned that it was good to see someone taking care of the old property. The previous owners had let things get run down. Bill said Marcus was doing a good job fixing it up. After 2 weeks, Marcus started noticing the joggers. 3 men would run past his house every Tuesday and Thursday morning. They wore matching shirts that said Community Safety Patrol on them. Marcus thought it was nice that the neighborhood had people who cared about keeping everyone safe. The joggers always ran together. One was tall and thin with blonde hair. Another was shorter with a beard. The third was medium height and very muscular. They ran in a tight group and talked as they went. Marcus waved from his porch one morning. Only one of them waved back. Sarah noticed them too. She was watering her flowers when they ran past on a Thursday. She mentioned that they seemed to slow down when they got to their property. She wondered if they were being nosy about the new neighbors. Marcus said they were probably just curious. New people in a small town always got attention. The first incident happened on a Tuesday in September. Marcus was getting ready for work when he heard a loud crash outside. He looked out his window and saw his mailbox lying in the ditch. The wooden post was broken in half. The metal box was dented and scratched. Marcus walked outside to look at the damage. The joggers were nowhere to be seen, but he could see them in the distance running away from his property. It seemed odd that they had not stopped to see what happened. Maybe they had not heard the noise. He loaded the broken mailbox into his truck and drove to the hardware store. The clerk there was helpful. He explained that mailboxes got hit by cars sometimes. It was just bad luck. Marcus bought materials to build a new one. He made it a little stronger this time with a thicker wooden post. 2 days later, Sarah called him at work. Someone had knocked over the new mailbox. This time it was bent but not completely broken. Sarah had seen tire tracks in the grass near where it fell, but no one had left a note or stopped to report the accident. Marcus began to feel uneasy. 2 mailbox accidents in 1 week seemed like too much to be random, but he told himself that these things happened. Maybe there was a problem with that spot. Maybe cars were having trouble seeing it. He would try moving it back a few feet from the road. The third incident happened on the following Tuesday. Marcus was working from home that day. He heard voices outside around 9 in the morning. He looked out his office window and saw the 3 joggers standing near his mailbox. They were pointing at it and talking. Marcus could not hear what they were saying, but they seemed angry about something. A few minutes later, he heard another crash. By the time he got outside, the joggers were gone. His mailbox was destroyed again. This time it looked like someone had kicked it over on purpose. The post was not broken by an accident. It had clear boot prints on it. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. This was not random. Someone was targeting his property. He thought about the joggers and their behavior. The timing seemed too perfect to be a coincidence. But he did not want to accuse anyone without proof. That evening, he told Sarah what he had seen. She was scared and angry. She asked if they should call the police. Marcus was not sure. What could he tell them? That some joggers might have damaged his mailbox? He had no real evidence. The police might think he was paranoid or trying to cause trouble. They decided to wait and see what happened. Marcus would build another mailbox. This time he would make it even stronger. If someone was trying to intimidate them, he would not give them the satisfaction of backing down. This was his home now. He had worked too hard to let anyone drive him away. As he went to sleep that night, Marcus could not shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Something in the way those joggers had looked at his property told him that bigger problems were coming, but he was determined to face whatever came next. He had not gotten this far in life by giving up when things got difficult.